Hello class, this is Marcella. This is the second part, or that kind of complementary part. So we talked about what was in the technical report. Now let's talk about how to actually get your data ready for that report. So this is an example of data that was collected in the previous year from Lake Vandus. So pretty similar to what you collected. We have the plot number, say your tree number, the species, whether it was live or dead, your diameter at breast height. I added this DBH class, and that's something you can add too, and we'll need to add. We're going to calculate basal area per tree. We're going to calculate our trees per acre. Our basal area per acre, we measured crown class, percent crown ratio, and height in the field. So let's get to it. So basal area per tree, this is that magic formula. 0.0055454 times your DBH squared. And this gives you basal area per tree. Now let's move into our measures per acre. So we use the fixed radius plot. So a fixed radius plot allows us to calculate trees per acre really easily. So in this case, we used a 1/20th acre plot. So each tree represents 20 trees per acre. If we had a 1/10th acre plot, each tree would represent 10 trees per acre. If we had a 1/100th plot, each tree would represent 100 trees per acre. We use this trees per acre for a lot of reasons, but one thing we need this for is to calculate basal area per acre. So we have our basal area per tree, and we need to multiply that by basal area or trees per acre to get our basal area per acre. And we can then drag this down. And what I'm doing now is just, these are the basic kind of functions that we talked about, or I talked about in that first Excel assignment, Excel video. So please review that, and we'll just kind of keep moving through this. So we've got our data. Let's now create a pivot table. So we go into Data, Pivot Table, Create Manual Pivot Table, and we'll put this in a new worksheet just to give us a little more space. Oop, new worksheet. There we go. We've got our new worksheet. So remember, with our pivot table is a great way to kind of look at a lot of different things. So we have two plots. Okay, let's say we have a few different species, right? We can look at our trees per acre by species per plot. Maybe even calculate some numbers. So we had a grand total of, for plot 1, 240 trees per acre, and for plot 2, 280, which makes sense. These were pretty dense plots. Most of that TPA was in red pine, a little bit in white pine. What we can do now is copy this. Ready? Copy and paste this and move this right over. And now we can calculate an average. We say yes. There we go. We can calculate our average and maybe our standard deviation. And again, we're just using these kind of equations that we went over in that initial video. So look, we have on average 170 trees per acre of red pine, 90 trees per acre of white pine, and 260 trees per acre total. Let's create a figure. So we're gonna, this is the information. Let's say we just want by species. So we're gonna copy, paste special values. We're gonna copy this, and let's create a nice figure. So in each figure, we have our average, and we also have a level of standard deviation. So insert, let's go into chart and figures. We'll do a column. So we have our average, we have our species. Now we need to add in some kind of label here, right? We need to have some kind of information on what this number is. So this is our trees TPA, right? That is not TTPA, TPA. So we have our average value here, but we need to have some kind of level of deviation. And look, we calculated that. So we can add our error bars, and we're going to put in our custom values. Ready? And we can just add those error bars right in there. Just like that. And you have your graph. You have your figure. So please go look at the technical report on how to make sure you're referencing this figure correctly. So we have our first figure. Great. So that's one thing. Let's talk about linear regression. So let's go back to our data. So here is our spreadsheet. We measured height on a few different trees. Let's sort by those trees. So remember, we want to select our whole data, which we have, when we do a sort. So custom sort, we'll remove that. We just want to sort by height. So we have a few trees. So let's create a regression with height versus diameter. So we're going to move this just over here. We're going to get the diameter of these trees. So let's create a regression. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back into our chart, and we're going to create a scatter plot. And look, we have height versus diameter. So let's make sure we put in these labels so we know what we're talking about. We'll also increase this size. So we have height in feet, and we have diameter in inches. So we're not only saying what it is, we're also putting our unit. Oh, that looks like a pretty nice line, pretty nice relationship. We can add a tread line. We're going to be tread line more options. We want a nice linear line, and we want to display our intercept and display our r squared. So that gives us a little more information on the fit, and also say we want it to predict the heights of these other trees, we can use this equation here. So, which is, we'll make this really big in a second. So we got this great equation. So we can use y equals 3.2053x. So our y is our height, our x is our diameter, and we can use this equation to predict the heights of the trees that we didn't measure. So height is equal to 3.2 times diameter plus 23.418. And it has a pretty good r squared, so about 80% of the variation we've got captured in here, which is not bad. So this is something you do need to calculate for the technical report. So you'll create a figure and talk about this. So we've talked about a few things. Let's go back to that pivot table over here. So we've got our pivot table. Let's look at, instead of plots, let's look at maybe putting together a diameter distribution. So I calculated these diameter classes. So we have our diameter distribution. Oh, let's put our species back. We have our species. So we can use, and instead of trees per acre, let's put in basal area per acre to see what that looks like. So we can look at how diameter is distributed by species. or by species by diameter class. So let's move a few things around to get this where we want it. So just move those cells and now we can make a diameter distribution. And we can see how that diameter is distributed, or how the basal area is distributed by the different diameter classes. And this is really a great useful figure because it lets you look at say the diameter classes. So most of our trees are in this kind of 11 to 15 inch. We might even say this is a pretty good example of a unimodal distribution which is very common of even age stands. And I'm just labeling this so we have BA per acre and we're putting square feet per acre. So we're putting our units. So this kind of wraps up. This is a good introduction of what you need to produce for your technical report. Again, please review the example on there and also review the assignment and email if you have any questions. Thank you.